to Jesus, and Jesus brought her healing. Her faith made her well. Her faith made her well. But it all began when she heard. This makes me think of Romans chapter 10, verse 14. Paul said, "How then will they call on him, Jesus, in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in whom, of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching?" Down in verse 17, faith comes from hearing, and hearing from the word of Christ. The woman heard about Jesus, she believed in Jesus, she went to Jesus, and she was healed by Jesus. She had to hear first. And in order to hear, she had to be told. Somebody had to tell her that something had happened with Jesus. And having heard, she believed. Having believed, she acted on that, and she went to Jesus. You see, sharing faith grows faith. Sharing faith grows faith. Somebody had to share the faith with the woman for her to go to meet Jesus. So sharing faith grows our faith individually. When we share our faith expands and grows, but it also grows numerically. When we share our faith, other people come to believe. They can only come to believe, according to Romans chapter 10, verse 14, if we are then to go out and tell, as Jesus instructed us in Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Go and tell. Go and make disciples. Acts 1. Go and be my witnesses. We're to go and make disciples. Tell as many people as possible. Share our faith. Because not only will it expand our faith, it will grow other people's faith as they begin to believe. This woman heard the reports, and she believed, and then acted on the faith that she now had. She had had no hope because that's all she'd experienced is letdown after letdown after letdown. Somebody tells her about Jesus, and she goes to hear how to be made well. And her faith does something phenomenal. But remember how this whole scenario started. Jairus came asking for help. They're going through town towards his house. This woman stops and touches Jesus. Jesus stops in the middle of the crowd. Everything is going on. There's no telling how long this took. If you're Jairus, are you getting a little antsy? Well, while this was happening, while Jesus was still commending the woman's faith, verse 35, while he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" So news comes. Having been delayed by the crowd, delayed because Jesus stopped to talk to the woman, somebody shows up and says, "It's over. She died. She didn't make it. Let's let the teacher continue on, minister to the other people in the crowd." But Jesus wasn't done because something else is going on. Verse 36. But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." So he says, do not fear. Don't have any fear about what you're hearing, about what they're telling you, about the experience that they've had. They've seen your daughter dead, so they're coming to tell you. Don't fear because of what you're hearing. Just believe because something else is going on that you don't know about yet. Verse, 37. And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." Now, commotion literally means loud, riotous, chaotic noise. So he shows up, there's all this noise and mess going on, and he says, "Why are you doing this? She's not dead, she's sleeping." Now their response to this is, this guy's nuts. Verse 40, and they laughed at him. But he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years of age. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. And he strictly charged them that no one should know this, and told them to to give her something to eat. So Jesus goes in and he raises the girl from the dead. He raises the girl from the dead. Faith, both for Jairus and the woman, faith led to action. The woman came to Jesus because she believed. Jairus had heard about Jesus, and he believed. Faith led to action because their faith overpowered the fear that they had. They had fear of, Jairus had fear that his daughter would die. The woman had fear that she would never be free from this disease. But when they had faith in Jesus, their faith was more powerful than their fear, and it led to their action. James, the brother of Jesus, wrote about this in James chapter 2, verse 26. He said, For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. If how you live doesn't back up your faith, then your faith is dead. If there's no action in your faith, then your faith is dead. It is atrophied in your very spirit. The father's faith, Jairus' faith, changed his approach to the situation in that he went to Jesus. And the father's faith changed the entire outcome of the situation. His daughter was raised from the dead. Faith heals. Not often physically. That's a lot of times that's what we want. We want faith to heal us physically every single time. And sometimes it does. I've seen it. But it doesn't every time. It doesn't actually most of the time, I would say. But faith always heals spiritually. Because spirit lasts forever. Physical does not. Would you rather have your spirit healed eternally or your body healed temporarily? The eternity is what matters. And so faith heals our spirit every single time. It heals our spirit always. Lasting spiritual healing is far more important than temporary physical healing. Yes, sometimes we want it so bad, the physical to be healed and the physical to be taken care of. But heaven is so much better than any physical pain we experience now. Paul says in Romans, imagine how bad things can get right here, right now on this broken temporary earth. How bad it is if you were to scale it on a scale, if it can get to like a negative 30 here because it feels so bad and so terrible. Heaven's like a plus 1,000 compared to your negative 30 now. It doesn't even compare, he says, how good it's going to be compared to how bad you got it now. The bad now is as bad as it's ever going to get. It's only ever going to go up from here if you know Jesus. Faith has great power. But faith has great power not because of the strength of your resolve. I'm going to have faith no matter what. Faith has great power because of the one in whom the faith is placed. So we can have fear in this life, or we can have faith in this life. Fear is faith in action, inactive faith. Fear is faith in action. But peace is faith in action. Peace is faith in action. Peace is faith that is active and doing something. Fear is faith that is doing nothing. It was said to God in Isaiah 26, you keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Trust is another way to say has faith in. You keep him in perfect peace because he has faith in you. You have faith in Jesus, you have peace. Peace is faith that is active. If your faith is active, peace is present. Peace is continuing on with you. Jairus and the woman, they had fear, but in hoping in Jesus, there was peace. Jesus spoke to the man after he was told, your daughter is dead. Jesus said, do not fear, only believe, to try to get him to experience that peace. The woman and Jairus, their experience and their understanding of what they perceived to be the reality of the situation led them to react the way they did. The woman had sought out every physician because her experience had showed her that. Her understanding of the situation had taught her, you need to seek out more physicians. But the reality was, if she sought Jesus, there's something else going on. What was thought to be the reality of the situation with Jairus and his daughter was, your daughter is dead. But something else was going on. So there was another reality that he did not understand. They thought they had a firm grip on the whole situation, but they did not. Paul writes about this very thing over in Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. Famous passage. Ephesians chapter 6, starting in verse 10. Paul says, "Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might." Now, I want you to notice something first in that verse. He's talking about the Lord's strength 3 times in that verse. Be strong in the strength of his might. Be strong is a command. Be strong, but he's not saying develop the strength within you. Be strong in the Lord. Receive the Lord's strength. And when he says in the strength of his might, the idea is someone who is so strong, the strength is palpable. You can feel it just by their presence in the room. You ever been in the room and somebody walks in and the entire temperature of the room changes because that person's in the room? It can be positive or negative. Somebody can walk in and change the temperature of the room just by their presence being there, and it's a terrible feeling. Or it can elevate the experience. This is the idea, is Jesus walks in the room and you can just feel his strength emanating from him. And if we are believers, we have that within us. It's accessible to all of us, that strength, because it's his, and he's with us. His presence is with us. We have access. All believers have access to that strength. But the fact that he says, be strong in the Lord, it's a command, so do it. Receive the Lord's strength. The implication then is sometimes we don't receive the Lord's strength. Sometimes what we end up doing, is he's going to explain in the passage in a sec, sometimes that we end up doing, I know I do, I tend to rely pretty heavily upon my own strength, or the strength that I think I have acquired from my own experiences, instead of relying on the Lord's strength. And when I do that, that gets me in all kinds of mess and trouble. Because, again, I don't know you, but I can guess Jesus is stronger than you are. Would you say yeah? If you say no, then we need to have a conversation. But it says, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Not be strong in Josh. I've done that plenty of times, and I've fallen flat on my face every time. But any time that I pursue the Lord and receive his strength, there's perseverance. There's power. There's peace in the Lord. I need to not listen to the lie of personal inner strength, because that's a facade that the enemy has built up to trick me into a false sense of security, which makes me an easier target for the enemy when I rely on my strength rather than the Lord's strength. I say, I'm strong enough, I can do it on my own. I'm powerful. That is a trick, that's a strategy the enemy uses to try to get us to forget that we have the strength of the Lord within us. So Paul tells us, rely on the Lord's strength, the strength of his might, the capability of his strength that's within us all. He says, for this, verse 11, so put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. And the devil's a schemer. He's going to bring out strategy after strategy against you, but he's almost never going to do it up front. He's always going to be subversive. He's always going to use trickery. He's always going to try to use people to mess you up, situations to mess you up. I mean, if the